Hello everyone, my name is Stonesy Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. There's not going to be any more second videos for the week, and yes, I know. Everyone's so scared and sad. I know, it's so sad. I don't remember what happened to Oscar and what he's doing. Right now, it's not the next day, but right now, it's 9:30. It has been a long time since I read, a couple hours. But I had to relax because everything was just getting too stressful. Everything that was happening behind me, everything that was just coming around me, it was weird. Anyways. Oh yeah, right, they're gonna start up and start playing with the robot. Maybe if we see it in action, we'll feel better, Oscar said, trying to reboot everyone's enthusiasm. Raj said, why not? Isaac shrugged too, but when he held up the mirrored instructions, I think we're on our own. Let's see what those human teeth can do, Raj said. Isaac shivered. Stop calling them that. Oscar tried pulling on Plushtrap's chin, but the jaw wouldn't budge. The mouth was only open enough a glimpse of human-like teeth, but it wouldn't open any further. Maybe if you push from its nose, Raj said, gripping the top of the rabbit's face, while Oscar continued to pull on the jaw. Here, you need more leverage, Isaac said, taking the rabbit's whiskers in its fists and yanking. Dude, you're gonna rip his face off, Oscar said, and stopped pulling a little too fast, sending RJ and Isaac rocking back on their heels. We just need something to pry it open, he said, trotting to the kitchen to grab a butter knife from the drawer. Then he returned. He jammed the flat end of the knife into the partially opened mouth, and when he pressed the knife, the thin metal gave suddenly. The tip of the knife broke off inside the rabbit's mouth. The pointed end seemed to be stuck in the weird teeth. Whoa, Raj said. Tell me it didn't take a bite out of a knife. Oscar looked at him, once again tiring of the struggle the toy was bringing. The payoff of his actions was becoming more elusive by the minute. It didn't bite the knife, Raj. It broke it. Maybe it just needs to be turned on before it'll open, Isaac said, and finally one of them was thinking clearly. Oscar and the boys parted the fur back of the rabbit, searching for the switch to indicate it was off. All they found was a line of Velcro close to their battery compartment, complete with one rectangular 9-volt battery tucked into its place. Below the battery compartment was a pattern of small holes. Is that a speaker? Asked Isaac. Hold on, it talks. Nah, Raj dismissed. Not in any of the ads. His brow crinkled. What does the rabbit even sound like? Gentlemen, focus. We're looking for a power switch. Check its feet, Oscar said. And sure enough, when they turned it over, a little black switch pointed to the on position. Okay, Isaac said, and he reached for the switch, flicking it off. Then on, then off again. Maybe it needs another battery, Raj said, and that sounded like a good reason as any. Oscar returned to the kitchen and rummaged through the junk drawer, sifting past rubber bands and orange juice coupons until he came upon an open package of 9-volt batteries, with one left in the box. Try this one, Oscar said, hustling back to the living room. The boys plucked the existing battery from its place, scraping away the little bit of white crust that corroded the inside. They placed the new battery in the component and closed the cover. Raj slapped his hands together and rubbed. This is it. Oscar picked the rabbit up and flipped the switch on, but the flash trap remained dormant, its mouth locked in a mostly closed position. Oh, come on, Isaac complained, the stress of the day clearly beginning to have an effect. Hang on, Oscar said, doing his best to calm the room. He was turning the box over and over in his hands, but the bold letters inside the comic book style, POW, burst into critical detail. Walks in the dark, freezes in the light. Guys, it only works when the lights are off, Oscar said, its heart filled with the tiniest bit of hope that it all wasn't lost. Though Raj and Isaac said in unison, as though... Oh, said Raj and Isaac in unison, as though it made perfect sense. Of course, somehow they had all managed to forget this one crucial detail. The boys got right to work, pulling drapes shut and flicking lights off, surrounding the bunny in as much darkness as possible. Enough daylight still leaked through the curtains to illuminate the disappointment on their faces. The plush trap chaser would chase nothing. "It's not dark enough yet," said Isaac. "It probably has to charge or something," Raj offered. But when neither Isaac nor Raj lobbied to take the plush trap home for the night, it was the last of Oscar's hope evaporated, leaving his insides feeling dry and cracked. It was just like everything else. He had the nerve to think of something good might come his way. He'd even done the one thing he swore himself and to his mom, to anyone whose opinion even mattered to him, he'd never do. He'd stolen. For all the tiny drop of what could have been taste of good fortune. Now he was left with 1/3 of $79.99 without one plush trap chaser, and maybe even the verge of losing the two friends who stuck their necks out for him when the thirst had become too great. Oscar's mom called that night. "Anything exciting happened today?" she asked. The same question she always asked she at work, and he was at home, feeding himself dinner and putting himself to bed while she worked the night shift, took care of an old people. "Nothing at all," he said, just like he always did. Only this time it hurt so much more to say it because something exciting had happened, and then it hadn't. Oscar woke to the smell of coffee like he did most mornings. His mom practically lived on the stuff. How she got home at 3 in the morning and woke up at 7, Oscar had never been able to find out. When he rolled out of bed, he was momentarily startled by a gooey-looking eye swimming in the gaping hollows of a green furry face. He really did look human. "Whoa there, creeper," he said to the plush trap. The rabbit stood at attention by his bedside, right where he left it last night. The tiny shard of a butterfly knife tip still stuck between the two of his visible incisors. But just like yesterday, it did absolutely nothing. Not that it should, given the daylight streaming through the thin curtains behind Oscar's bed. It's possible he'd gone to bed with the hope that at night, in his dark room, would charge whatever power source it had triggered by the boys the day before. It was just another stupid hope, though. Oscar shuffled down the hall in his flannel pants and kissed his mom on the cheek like he always did. If Raj or Isaac ever saw him do that, they never let him forget it. But Oscar knew what it meant to his mom, and he didn't mind it so much. After his dad died, Oscar took up the habit without his mom ever asking. When he was too short to reach her head, he kissed her elbow, and then her shoulder. It was just a peck, hardly even a kiss, given that Oscar tucked his lips into his mouth. But disappointing his mom wasn't really an option. After Oscar poured himself a glass of juice and a bowl of sugar flakes, he munched away as usual until he finally looked up and noticed his mom hadn't said a word to him. She was looking down at a newspaper they still had delivered every morning because as she put it, a subscription was cheaper than a smartphone plan. She hadn't looked up for even a second. His stomach instinctively dropped. "What's up?" he asked, his voice pitched a little higher than usual. His mom slurped her coffee slowly before pulling her mug away from her mouth, her head still down. "Seems there was sort of an incident at the mall yesterday afternoon." Oscar didn't think it was possible for his stomach to sink any lower, but found a new depth in a hurry. "Oh yeah?" he said, shoving a mound of sugar flakes into his mouth. "Do the best not to throw it right back up." "Mm-hmm," his mom said. "Says here the Emporium had to call security and everything," she said, taking another sip of coffee. "Oh, wow," Oscar said, spooning more sugar flakes into his mouth, even though he wasn't finished chewing the first spoonful. "All over some stupid toy. Apparently a couple of kids even made off with one during the commotion." Then Oscar's mom did look up, fixing her down dark brown eyes on Oscar's. People are always telling them how much they looked alike, with their smooth features and eyes like coal. "Can you believe that?" she asked, and Oscar understood that she was asking exactly that. if he could believe it, because if he knew anything about it, anything at all, it wouldn't be so hard to believe it was true. Irvin mentioned something about the boys heading to the mall yesterday, she said, giving Oscar so many chances not to lie. She opened every single door to the truth, inviting Oscar to walk through. To be honest, she was still begging him not to disappoint her. But it wasn't just Oscar's lie to protect anymore. Oscar had made sure of what he dragged Raj and Isaac along with him. So Oscar made the decision. He disappointed his mom to save his friends. Must have been after we got there, Oscar says. Then he shrugged, a period on the line on the end of the lie. Oscar's mom stared at him for so long he thought maybe he could apologize without saying a word. He hoped his mom could hear it. Instead, she finally released the gaze and drained the last drop of coffee into her mug, folded the paper over herself, and threw it into the recycling bin without another word. Oscar had never felt smaller. He spent the rest of the day at home, avoiding Raj's calls and pretending he didn't hear Isaac knocking at his door. He lay on his bed, instead staring at the bulging eyes of the plush trap, while it stared back at him. "You're worse than useless," he said. Or maybe, he said to himself. The next few days passed by Oscar in a blur, and finally Isaac and Raj cornered him in the cafeteria. "Look, if you're possessed, we'll understand, okay?" Isaac said. "Just blink twice if you need help. Come on, man. If you're trapped in there, let us help you," Raj said, nodding with Isaac. "I'm not possessed," Oscar said, and he couldn't make himself smile. "Dude, if this is still about the plush trap thing," Isaac said, and Oscar thought it was a funny way of referring no misdemeanor, or whatever. "It's not just that," Oscar said, and Raj and Isaac got quiet. Oscar figured they probably understood. They had been friends long enough for him to notice that Oscar's shoes never had the right logo, and his backpack had to last 2 school years instead of one. "First generation of technology was always bogus anyway," Raj said. "We'll save up for Gen 2. It'll give them a chance to work out all the bugs." Isaac nodded, and Oscar actually did feel better. They didn't hate him. He was down a mom had a plush trap, but he was up to Frank. Things were starting to even out. That's probably what made the thing he had to say next even harder. "I've got to take it back." Isaac put his palm to his forehead, and Raj just closed his eyes. Clearly, they'd seen this coming. "With those eyes and those teeth in it?" Raj said. "Come on, dude, just let it go." "I can't. My mom knows." They both look up. "How are you even alive?" asked Isaac. "I mean, she didn't say she knows, but she knows," Oscar said. "What good will it even do?" asked Raj. "It's busted. Our money's already gone. And do you really want to answer questions about those, upgrades?" Raj and Isaac looked around to make sure no one had heard. Oscar understood. It was bad enough owning up to theft. Raj was right. He absolutely did not want to answer any questions about eerily human eyes instead of matching human teeth, which was still impossible, Oscar told himself, even though that he swore that last night those same eyes had followed him across the room. He shook it off the memory. "That isn't the point," Oscar said, and Raj and Isaac couldn't say anything because they knew it was true. It wasn't about the money or the toy. It was about the taking, and Oscar wasn't a taker. None of them were. "You guys don't have to come," he said. "I was the one who did it." But Raj and Isaac just sighed and looked at their shoes, and Oscar knew he wouldn't be walking to the mall himself by that afternoon. His friends would be there with him. "You're an idiot," said Isaac. "I know." For some reason, the box felt heavier than Oscar's hands on the way back to the mall. Maybe it was because of all the money they sunk into it. "What if we see those security guards again?" Isaac said, and they stopped just outside the doors of the east entrance. Raj shook his head. "What are they gonna do? Arrest us for returning what we stole?" "Good point," Isaac said. They began to slow walk into the Emporium, but when they arrived, the Emporium was gone. "What?" Oscar whispered as he reread the big orange letters lighting the place above the glass doors. what used to be yellow, and they spelled, "How's Halloween Hallway?" "Did we come to the wrong entrance?" Roz asked, but they all knew they hadn't. Any doubts that remained were laid to rest the minute they walked through the door. The same stained, grimy floor spread the length of the store, but now, instead of shelves lined with dusty toys and dark spaces, every sort of Halloween acrobat spilled from the mental racks. There was an aisle for decorations and lights, another for party favors, two for candy, and what looked like five for six aces crammed with every sort of costume from murderous slashers to sparkly princesses. "Did we fall through a wormhole or something?" Isaac asked, scratching the back of his neck. "Hey guys, look!" Raj chuckled, pulling a green plush trap chaser costume from the rack and holding it against him. "Dude, seriously?" Isaac said, yanking the costume from Raj's hand and replacing it. Oscar made his way to the cashier's counter at the front of the store, the scene of humanity's meltdown not even a week ago. "Where's the Emporium?" asked Oscar in a daze. The girl behind the counter wore a pair of yellow antennae and long springs that bounced like she would look down from her perch at Oscar. "The what?" "The store that was here before," Oscar said. "Oh yeah," she said without answering the question nor apparently caring to. "Where'd it go?" Oscar said. "No, not a clue," the girl said, returning to the screen of her phone. "I just filled out an application and poof," she said, waving her hand lazily. "Here I am." "But I need to return this," said Oscar, suddenly feeling very young and small next to this older girl. The girl looked back down at him and her eyes widened just enough to know he'd finally gotten her attention. This lasted only a second, though. "Is that what I think it is?" she asked, looking at her screen again. "Why would you want to return it? You could sell that thing for a fortune." It's not mine," Oscar said, looking down. When he looked back up, the girl had lifted an eyebrow closest to him. "It is now." Oscar looked back down at his box in his hands, the cardboard thing looking more crinkled than ever. When he rejoined Raj and Isaac, they were decked out fully in hockey masks and pixie wings. I'm going for a kind, murderous fairy vibe," said Raj. I can't return it," Oscar said to Isaac, and Raj lifted their mask. "Well, no one can say we didn't try, right?" Raj said. "Maybe it's for the best," said Isaac, but he didn't follow it up with anything, so Oscar knew he couldn't think of a reason why. 10 minutes and 3 sets of pixie wings and hockey masks later, the boys headed back to the Oscars' house to devise a plan for trick-or-treating. Every year they vowed to make it to the other side of the train tracks, where the good candy was rumored to be. Every year they ran out of time, distracted by false promise of good stuff closer by. "We fall for it every time," said Raj. "Not this year. This year we start on the other side of the tracks, work our way back." Oscar and Isaac agreed. It was a good plan. The plan set. Raj and Isaac fell deep into a match to the death on Raj's newest console game, taking turns after wiping palm sweat on the controllers before each turn. "You're going down," said Raj, his thumbs jammed fiercely in the buttons while Isaac sat back smiling. "Every time," Isaac said. "You say it every time. One day, you're just going to have to admit, you're not the champion." Raj said, beads of sweat forming from his brow. Oscar was barely paying attention, though. He was chiseling away at the remaining battery leakage from the compartment on the back of the plush trap chaser. The wind was picking up outside, and it looked like the storm the news had been blathering on about for the last week was finally going to hit. The electricity kept flickering on and off, which was only contributing more to Raj's losing streak. "Come on, it doesn't count if the power goes out," Raj complained. "I don't make the rules," Isaac said, smug in his luck. It had to make Raj even angrier at the game was his, so was the console. He should be better at it, except they mostly kept it plugged in at Oscar's because he was the only one without siblings hanging around begging to play. Oscar wasn't interested in video games right then, though. "Oscar, help me out here. Power outages warrant a redo, don't they?" Raj asked while they waited for the power to come back on. The light outside was fading fast. Oscar said. He tried scraping away the rest of the gunk, swapping out the battery for one in the little fan that sat in his room bedside the table. Even turning the battery around to face the opposite charge, hoping maybe this was a manufacturing defect. Nothing powered the plush trap chaser, though. Why are you still messing with that? Isaac said, clearly tired of the drama it had brought on the last several days. He's right, said Raj, in a rare moment of agreement. It's hopeless, Oscar. Just let it go. I think we should literally let it go, Isaac said. As in, get rid of it. He twisted his mouth for a second. It's not just broken, it's, I don't know, just wrong. Oscar didn't agree. He wasn't going to admit it. He ignored Isaac. He ignored Raj, too. But Oscar didn't feel like he was hopeless. They'd gotten away from mall security. He kept the truth from his mom. They tried to do the right thing and return it. It was like there was some reason he'd had to keep this thing. He flipped it over and stared into the murky, glistening green eyes of the ugly rabbit. If you're possessed, blink twice, he said to the bunny, chuckling quietly. Yet while the plush trap didn't blink, it emitted a sound, a sort of quiet chirp, so fast it might not have happened at all. Did you guys hear that? Hear what? Said Raj. Raj. Weird name, but still. The power flickered back on, and the video games resumed along with Raj and Isaac's arguing as they continued their tournament to the death. Then, just as Oscar was ready to flip the rabbit over again and take out the thousandth look at the battery compartment, he spotted a tiny hole outside of the rabbit's metal jaw. At first, it looked like nothing but a bolt hanging over a hinge on the lower jaw, but from the angle, though, Oscar could see it wasn't a bolt at all. It was a port. Oscar's house phone began to ring as the lights flickered again. With the plush trap still in his hands, Oscar ran to the kitchen to catch the call before his machine picked up. Even if they could afford two phone plans, Oscar's mom would have insisted on keeping the landline. She was big on backup system. Hold on. The line was crackly. It took Oscar asking 3 times who was it before he could clearly hear his mom's voice. The storm, his mom said. How about now? Yeah, I can hear you, Oscar said, barely listening. He was trying to get a closer look at the port of the plush trap, but it was hard when the light in the kitchen kept blinking out. LM, I need your help tomorrow, she said. Sure, Mom, he said, not listening. I'm sorry to ask. You know how much I hate asking. It's just that with this storm tonight, we've had so many people call in sick. We're going to be completely backed up on laundry and charts tomorrow. And, are you listening? Uh-huh, Oscar lied. It suddenly dawned on him that she sounded so apologetic. Wait, no, Mom, no, not tomorrow. I knew you'd be upset, hon, but it's, Mom, tomorrow is Halloween, Oscar said, suddenly panicked at what he'd agreed to. Not that he'd have much of a say in the matter either way. I realize that, but sweetie, aren't you and your friends a little too old to be? No. Why do you always do that? Oscar said, taking it a little too far, but now it was too late. Do what? Oscar could barely hear his mom now. The storm was encroaching on his phone lines and rattling the house from the outside. Maybe in the fact that it sounded way too far away that made Oscar feel like he could get away with what he said next. You're like I'm older. Like I should be just like you. Like I should be just like Dad. You never let me be a kid. Dad died, and you're expecting me to just grow up? Oscar, I stole it, okay? I stole the stupid plush trap toy. Your little man stole it, Oscar said, and he knew it was cruel. But he was so angry because it was happening again. Once again, he was missing out on what everyone else got to enjoy. The lights blinked off, and then suddenly his mom was gone. Mom? But all that greeted him was silence, and the echo of his own breath. Finally, the rapid tone of a circuit's busy signal. Oscar walked slowly back to his room, just in time to watch Isaac put the finishing moves on Raj's fighter. All Oscar could do, though, was stare into the tiny point of the plush trap's jaw. The damage of what he might have done to his mother was too much to contemplate all at once. Raj, I need your cell phone charger, Oscar said. What? Right now? I was just catching up, he said, pointing at the screen. No, you weren't, Oscar said. Listen to the man, Isaac said. He speaks the truth. Oscar flinched at a reference to him as a man and followed Raj to the hallway. There he fished a knotted cord from the drawer and handed it to Oscar. Oscar knew it was kindness of Raj not to ask that he'd need a phone charger for if he didn't have a phone, but Raj was still following Oscar's motions with interest. Back in Oscar's room, Isaac had Raj's fighter HP down to 10%. Oscar took a small breath and held it, and then brought the charger's A connector to the hole with the plush strap's head, then plugged it snugly in place. Oscar exhaled. This is it, Raj. I'm putting you out of your misery in 3. The sound of Isaac's fighter powering up his death move pulsed on Oscar's ears as he marched the plush strap charger into the outlet across the room. 2, said Isaac, as the lights began to flicker overhead. Just get it over with, Raj said miserably, and you're dead. Oscar didn't remember plugging the adapter into the wall. He didn't remember the lights going out or Isaac's fighter winning the golden bell. But if he was pressed, he might not be able to remember his own name. All he knew for the moment, the room was dark. He was on the other side of it. What the? He could hear Isaac say. Do you smell burning? He could hear Raj say. Oh man, Oscar, Isaac said. Oscar? Oscar? Said Raj. Oscar couldn't understand why they seemed so panicked. He could barely make out the outline of their heads in the moonlight that illuminated the room with flicks and whips, while the tree branches outside waved under the storm. Oscar, how many fingers am I holding up? Said Raj. You're not holding anything up, Isaac said, and Raj shook his head. Right, sorry, I'm fine, Oscar said, not certain that was true, but he was getting weirded out with them acting so worried about him. What's wrong with you guys? Do you not remember soaring across the room? Raj said, as they looked even more worried now. Knock it off, Oscar dismissed, using the wall to support as he struggled back to his feet. His head felt like it was struck in a fish tank. We're not messing with you, Isaac said, and a closer look at their faces Oscar told Oscar it was true. 1 minute you're plugging in the charger, the next minute you're airborne. I think it was the lightning. Outside, the moon fought for space in the sky against the invading clouds inside. Oscar's vision blurred for the moment longer, until he finally felt things come into focus. Maybe we should call his mom, he heard Isaac say. No, don't call her, Oscar said, and they both looked worried again. What if your brain shorted out or something? Raj said. I'd still be smarter than you, Oscar murmured. He's fine, said Isaac. Oscar tried the light switch in the door. Dead. Isaac tried the remote and the television, but the screen stayed dark. Nothing. Well, I guess that settles it, Raj said, heading for their living room, where their sleeping bags were. We have no choice but to get sick on scorching hot cheese knobs and knock out tomorrow's night plans. Raj and Isaac headed for the living room, but Oscar lagged behind them in his room. Halloween. For a precious minute, he had forgotten that he wouldn't be able to go trick-or-treating. As the clouds swept away from the room, Oscar looked across the room and saw a blackened scorched line beginning at the outlet and traveling up the wall. Great, Oscar muttered. Something else to apologize for. He was already formulating his expression to his mom that he swore that he saw a flicker of movement from the plush trap chaser, still miraculously plugged into the fright outlet. Was that you? He said. The ugly green rabbit merely stared back at him. The glow of moonlight making its buggy eyes seem to shimmer. Well, that's the end of the reading for today. We will see how that the rest of that night goes. Wow, 30 minutes only? That was pretty good. I didn't stop reading. I didn't make any comments because I'm tired. So this has been a very easy video and maybe a world record for this. I don't know. Hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. Don't die to coronavirus. Skitty beep, dotty beep, bop. No, you know what? It's already been Mario's birthday. We need a new one. Skeet beep ba, skee ba da ba dee ba ba be da.